The Voyages and Travels of Sinbad the Sailor, giving a full account of his 7 wonderful voyages. Sindbad a Euro trademark's life is full of peril, full of shipwrecks, lull of famine, full of riches of great worth, full of everything but truth. Derby. Published by Thomas Richardson. Price 6d. Sinbad the Sailor. During the reign of the Caliph Harun al-Rashid, there lived in the city of Baghdad a poor porter named Hindbad. One day, when the weather was excessively hot, Hindbad was employed to carry a heavy burden to a great distance from that part of the city where he lived. Being faint with the heat and very weary, and having still a great way to go, he entered a street where a refreshing breeze blew on his face, and the pavement was sprinkled with rose water. Glad to find such a resting place, he laid down his load, and seated himself beside it, near to a great house. The windows of the house were open, and Hindbad was regaled with the smell of the richest perfumes that came from within. Presently he heard a delightful concert of all kinds of musical instruments, mixed with the finest voices, and the melodious notes of nightingales and other rare birds. Hindbad had never been in that quarter of the town before, and he felt a great desire to know to whom this magnificent house belonged. Seeing a servant standing at the gate in a splendid livery, he advanced towards him, and with great humility inquired the name of the master of the house. "A euro, or is it possible a euro?" said the servant. "A euro, or that you are an inhabitant of Baghdad, and do not know that this is the house of Sinbad the Sailor, that famous traveller who has sailed round the world, a euro." Poor Hindbad, who had often heard of the wonderful riches of Sinbad the Sailor, and whose condition he thought was as happy as his own was deplorable, turned away sorrowfully, and sitting down again beside the great load he had to carry, he cried aloud, "A euro, or lass! What a difference between this fortunate man and me! I am every day exposed to the greatest fatigues, and all the wretchedness of extreme poverty. Scarcely can I earn sufficient of the coarsest barley bread for the support of myself and family, while happy Sinbad profusely expends immense riches, and leads a life of continual ease and pleasure. O heavens! What has he done to obtain a lot so fortunate? And why am I condemned to so much wretchedness?" A euro thus saying, Hindbad, overcome with sorrow, threw himself upon the ground and wept bitterly. While the poor man was thus indulging his grief, a servant came from the house, and taking him by the arm, told him that Signor Sinbad wished immediately to speak to him. Hindbad was greatly alarmed at this message, thinking that Sinbad had heard his lamentations, and was going to reproach or punish him. He therefore tried to excuse himself from entering the house, saying that he was in haste, and that he could not leave his burden in the open street. Sindbad a Euro trademark's servant, however, would not take a refusal, because his Mr. a Euro trademark's commands had been absolute, and calling another domestic to look after the goods, he led the porter into a great hall, where a large company sat round a table covered with all sorts of dainties served in dishes of silver and gold. At the upper end of the table sat Sinbad, a comely, venerable gentleman with a long white beard. Hindbad a Euro trademark's terror increased at the sight of so many people, and he trembled and hung back, till Sinbad, in the most courteous manner imaginable, desired him to draw near, and, placing him in a chair on his right hand, served him from the choicest dishes, and gave him excellent wine in a crystal goblet. When the porter had made an end of his dinner, Sinbad inquired his name and occupation. "A euro me name, Signor a euro," said he, "a euro ace. Hindbad, and I am nothing but a poor porter a euro." "A euro well, Hindbad a euro," rejoined the master of the house, "a euro I and my friends here are very glad to see you, but I sent for you on account of some words I heard you utter, as I was standing near that window a euro." "A euro alas! Signor a euro," exclaimed Hindbad, rising from his chair, and blushing exceedingly, "a euro I confess that my weariness and the heat of the day put me out of humour, and made me speak many indiscreet things, which I beg you to pardon a euro." "A euro me good friend a euro," replied Sinbad, "a euro I am not so unjust as to be offended with you, on the contrary, I pity your condition, and when I commanded you to be brought hither, it was that I might convince you I did not attain to this happy condition without enduring more sufferings, and encountering greater dangers than can be well imagined. Yes, gentlemen a euro," he added, looking round the table upon his guests. "A euro I assure you my difficulties were so extraordinary, that they were sufficient to discourage the most covetous man from running the same perils in pursuit of riches, and to convince you of the truth of what I assert, I will, if you are disposed to hear me, relate the history of the extraordinary adventures I met with in the course of my 7 voyages a euro." This proposal was highly acceptable to the whole company, and Sinbad, having ordered a servant to carry Hindbad a euro trademark S load to the appointed place, commenced his narration as follows. The first voyage of Sinbad. A euro me father dying while I was very young, and leaving me a considerable fortune, I fell into a course of dissipation that injured my health and destroyed my fortune. Having no parent to control me, and being surrounded only by profligate persons, I continued my excesses till I fell into a fit of sickness. My riotous companions then forsook me, and I was left alone to struggle with my diseases, and to endure the severity of remorse for a misspent youth. At length I recovered from my illness, and resolving never to return to my former course of living, I collected together the remains of my fortune, sold my furniture by public auction, and embarked with several merchants on board a ship, which we had jointly laden with merchandise, for the port of Balsara. A euro in the course of our voyage we touched at several islands, where we sold or exchanged our goods. One day we were becalmed near a small island almost level with the surface of the water, and which resembled a beautiful green meadow. The captain ordered his sails to be furled, and the merchants, among whom was myself, and several officers of the ship, determined to carry our provisions, and dine upon the little island. While we were in the very midst of preparation for dinner, shouting, laughing, and had kindled a large fire to dress our provisions, the island began to move, and at the same moment those who were left in the ship called to us to re-embark instantly, or we should all be lost, as what we had taken to be an island was only the back of a monstrous whale. The nimblest sprung into the sloop, others jumped into the waves, and betook themselves to swimming, but for my part I was still on the back of the whale. When he dived into the sea, and had only time to catch hold of a broad piece of wood that had been brought out of the ship to serve as a table. On this piece of wood I floated, but the current carried me away from the ship, and the captain, having received on board those who were in the boat, and picked up one or two of the swimmers. He concluded that I was lost. A favorable gale. Just then springing up, he hoisted the sails, and pursued his voyage. I struggled to save myself all the rest of the day and the following night. Next morning I found my strength gone, and despairing of my life, when happily a wave threw me against an island. The bank was steep, high, and rugged. Yet, faint and exhausted as I was, I climbed it by the means of some roots of trees that seemed to have been preserved in this place for my safety. I then lay down till the sun appeared, when, crawling on my hands and knees in search of some herbs to eat, I found a spring of excellent water. Having refreshed myself greatly with the water, I advanced farther along the high shore of the island till I came to a cave, wherein I lay down, and slept profoundly during many hours. When I awoke again it was almost sunset. I hastily left my cave to search for some habitation. However, I found none, but I soon came to a small plain, surrounded with fine trees, bearing all sorts of fruit, and what surprised me most was to see a great number of beautiful young colts grazing together, but no traces of any other animals. I supped upon fruit, and climbed the branches of a high tree for my lodging. About midnight I was greatly astonished and alarmed to hear the sound of trumpets and drums, which seemed to pass all round the island, and continued through the night, but when morning came, it still appeared to be uninhabited. The next day I discovered that the island was small and round, and that no other land was to be seen from it. I now gave myself up for lost. Every part of the shore abounded with enormous sea snakes, and of fishes that are 100 and 200 cubits long, some having heads like owls, and others with human faces, but I found these sea monsters perfectly harmless, for on my rattling two sticks together, they dived into the sea, and I saw no more of them. I climbed my tree again that night, and the drums and trumpets at midnight seemed to be even louder than before. On the third day, to my great joy, a party of men landed on the island, who were completely astonished to find me there. Having related to them the strange accident that had befallen me, they gave me some provisions, and then informed me they were the grooms of King Mirage, and that the island upon which I was thrown was called Castle, ere it belonged to the warlike Jenny Degel, who visited it every night with drums and trumpets, and that the Jenny, being the friend of King Mirage, permitted him to have his young colts trained upon the island, which contained such admirable pasture, that they became the swiftest and finest horses in the world, and that they, the grooms of the king, were sent at the expiration of every 6 months to the island, to select such of the young horses as were fit to be placed in the royal stables. Grooms carried me with them to the capital of King Mirage, which was a fine harbour, where ships arrived daily from all quarters of the world. The king allowed me apartments in one of his palaces, and delighted greatly in my conversation. One day, having walked to the principal quay, several seamen were busily employed in unloading a ship newly arrived in the harbour. As I cast my eye on some of the bales of goods that were landed, I perceived them, by the marks, to be the same that I had put on board when I embarked for Balsara. I also knew the captain, but supposing that he believed me to have perished, I carelessly asked him to whom those bales belonged. To a merchant trademark, he replied. Of Baghdad, who unfortunately perished at sea. and I intend to trade with them till I meet with some of his family, to whom I will account for the profit. A euro trademark. A euro captain, a euro trademark, said I. A euro, I am Sinbad, and those bales are mine. A euro trademark. The captain started, and lifting up his hands and eyes with amazement, cried out aloud, A euro, is there no faith left among men? I and many of my passengers saw Sinbad swallowed up in the waves, many hundred leagues from hence, and yet you tell me you are Sinbad. What matchless impudence! You look like an honest man, and yet you tell a horrible falsehood to possess yourself of that which does not belong to you. A euro trademark. A euro, but some other persons coming from the ship instantly knew me, and I was not long in convincing the captain that I was the real Sinbad, and no impostor, upon which he presented me my bales with 1,000 congratulations. I offered him a part of my goods in requital for his probity, but this he steadily refused. A euro, I then selected the most valuable articles out of my bales, and presented them to King Mirage, who accepted my present, and gave me a rich one in return. I then took leave of him and the whole court, and went on board the same ship, after I had exchanged my goods for the commodities of the country, and then came to the city with 100,000 sequins. Here I bought slaves of both sexes, fine lands, and built a great house and settled myself, determined to forget my past dangers, and to enjoy the pleasures of life. A euro. Sinbad then ordered the musicians to go on with their concert, and when it was ended, he gave a purse with 100 sequins to Hindbad, saying, A euro, take this, Hindbad, return home, and regale yourself with your family tonight, but come back tomorrow, when you shall hear much more extraordinary adventures that have befallen me than those of my first voyage. A euro. The porter went home astonished at the honor done him, and his wife and children, at their plentiful supper, prayed to God to grant a long life to the generous Sinbad. On the following day Hindbad put on his best clothes, and returned to the bountiful traveller, who received him kindly, and after a sumptuous dinner was ended, and the company were ready to attend to him, he began the history of his second voyage. The second voyage of Sinbad. A euro, I designed, after my first voyage, to spend the rest of my days at Baghdad, but ere long I grew weary of a quiet life. Accordingly I purchased rich commodities, and went to sea a second time, with some other merchants. One day we landed on an uninhabited island, almost covered with trees bearing delicious fruits, while some diverted themselves with gathering flowers, and others with gathering fruits. I took my wine and provisions, and sat down by a stream, between two large trees, which formed an agreeable shade. After I had eaten of my provisions I fell asleep. I cannot tell how long I had slept, but when I awoke, not only my companions, but the ship itself was gone. Nothing could exceed my grief and consternation. At this event, I shrieked with agony, and threw myself upon the ground, where I lay some time in the deepest affliction, and bitterly upbraiding my folly in not having been content to remain in peace and security at home. A euro, or after a long interval I became more resigned to my misfortune. I climbed to the top of a very high tree, to see if there were anything that could give me hopes. When I looked towards the sea I beheld nothing but sky and water, but looking toward the island, I perceived something large and white, but the distance was too great to allow me to distinguish what it really was. I therefore hastened down from the tree, and, taking up my provisions, I ran towards it. As I came nearer, I thought it was a large white bowl, and when I came quite up to it, and touched it, I found it as smooth as ivory. I walked round it, to see if it was open on any side, but it was not, and it was impossible to climb to the top of it, the surface was so smooth and slippery. It was at least 50 paces round. By this time it was near sunset, and on a sudden the sky became quite darkened. I looked up to see what had occasioned this sudden darkness, and beheld a bird of enormous size, moving like a great black cloud towards me. I immediately recollected that I had heard mariners speak of a bird called a roc, so large that it could carry away young elephants, and I concluded that the great white bowl which I so much admired, must be its egg. I was right in my supposition, for the bird alighted, and sat over the egg. As I perceived her coming I had crept close to the egg for shelter, so that I had before me one of the legs of the bird, which was as large as the trunk of a tree. I tied myself firmly to the leg of the roc with the cloth of my turban, in hopes that when she flew away the next morning, she would carry me out of this desert island, and, having passed the night in this condition, the bird flew away the next morning, and carried me so high into the air that I could not see the earth, and suddenly descended so swift, that I lost my senses. On coming to myself, and finding the roc on the ground, I speedily untied the cloth which bound me to her leg, and scarcely was I free, when the bird, having taken up a large serpent in her bill, again flew away. The place in which the roc left me was a deep valley, encompassed on every side with high mountains, whose lofty tops seemed to reach the clouds. Their sides were so steep that it was impossible to ascend them. This was a new perplexity, so that when I compared this valley with the desert island from whence the roc had brought me, I found I had gained nothing by the exchange. As I paced up and down the valley, musing on my hard fortune, I observed that the ground was strewed with diamonds of surprising large size. I took great pleasure in looking at them, but I saw such objects as I could not behold without terror and dismay. These were serpents peeping out of the holes in the rocks. I got as far from them as I could, and spent the day in considering how I should escape from this scene of splendor and horror, and when night came I took shelter in a cave, the entrance of which I covered with large stones to preserve me from the snakes, but their hissing was so incessant during the whole night, that I could not close my eyes. When day appeared the serpents retired to their holes, and I came out of the cave trembling. I walked a long time upon diamonds without the least inclination to touch one of them. At last I sat down, and being overcome with fatigue I fell asleep. I was awakened by the noise of something that fell close beside me. This was a great piece of fresh meat, and immediately I saw several others fall from the rocks in different places. It immediately occurred to my mind the account I had heard of the famous Diamond Valley, and the stratagems used to get jewels from thence, but now I was convinced what I heard was true, that the merchants came to the top of these impassable mountains, near where the eagles build their nests, and throwing joints of raw meat down into the valley, the diamonds upon which they fall stick to them. Then the eagles, lured by the smell of the meat, pounce with great fury upon it, and carry it to their nests to feed their young, when the merchants, being on the watch, frighten away the eagles, and take the diamonds. A falling of the meat into the valley gave me hopes of getting alive out of this dreadful abyss, which otherwise must have been my grave. I therefore hastened to pick up some of the largest diamonds I could find, which I carefully put into a little bag, and fastened it to my girdle. I then selected the largest piece of meat in the valley, which I tied to my waist with the cloth of my turban, and then lay down upon my face to wait the descent of the eagles. They were not long in coming, and one of the strongest having pounced upon the meat upon my back, flew with me to its nest on the top of the mountain. The merchants began shouting to frighten the eagles, and when they had obliged them to quit their prey, one of them came to the nest where I was. At first he was much frightened at seeing me, but recovering himself, began to quarrel with me, and accused me of stealing his goods. You will treat me trademark, replied I. With more civility when you know me better. Do not be uneasy, I have diamonds enough for you. And myself too, far more than all the other merchants put together. Trademark. I had scarce done speaking when the merchants gathered round us. I told them my story, and they were equally surprised at my expedient to save myself and my courage to attempt it. Having carried me to the place where they sheltered themselves, I opened the bag, and they declared that in all the courts they had never seen any diamonds of equal size and luster. I desired the merchant, to whose nest I had been carried, to take as many as he pleased, but he contented himself with taking one of the least, declaring it was of sufficient value to make his fortune. I spent the night with the merchants, to whom I related my history a second time. I could not moderate the joy I felt in having escaped so imminent a clangor. Indeed, at times it appeared to me as if I were dreaming, and I often started and questioned myself if I were in reality safely out of the inaccessible valley. Merchants having gathered together their diamonds, we left the place on the following morning, and crossed the mountains till we arrived at a port where we took shipping, and landed on the Isle of Roha, where the trees grow that yield camphor. Here I exchanged some of my diamonds for other merchandise, and from thence we set sail for Balsara, and continued my journey overland to Baghdad, and once more arrived in my native city. I gave great alms to the poor, and lived there for some time. Thus Sinbad ended the history of his second voyage, presented Hindbad with another purse, and desired him to return on the following day, which the porter did not fail to do, and dinner being ended, the master of the feast resumed his narration. The second voyage of Sinbad. Pleasures and comforts I now enjoyed made me forget my past difficulties. I was still in the prime of life, was of an active disposition, and had a great desire to see upon a third voyage, and with a cargo of the richest merchandise of Egypt I once more took shipping at the port of Balsara. After we had been at sea some weeks we were overtaken by a dreadful storm, which almost tore the vessel to pieces. We beat about at the mercy of the winds and waves during several days, and at last we were obliged to cast anchor before an island, for which the captain had vainly endeavoured to steer. He now informed us that this and several other neighbouring islands were inhabited by savages, covered with hair, who would speedily attack us in great numbers, and that if we offered to make the least resistance they would come upon us in swarms, and destroy us without mercy. We soon found the captain trademark's information to be true, for a multitude of frightful savages, about 2 feet high, and covered all over with red hair, came swimming towards us, and boarded our ship, chattering a language of which we could not comprehend a word. In an instant they took down our sails, cut the cable, towed the ship to land, and having made us all get out, they carried off our ship in triumph to another island. We went forward into the island on which we were landed in deep dismay, expecting nothing but death. When we had got a little way, we beheld a huge pile of building, and made towards it. We found it to be a lofty palace, with a folding gate of ebony, which we pushed open, and entered a spacious court, that led to a vast apartment with a porch, having on one side a great heap of human bones, and on the other a number of roasting spits. At this terrible spectacle our legs trembled under us, and we fell to the ground, where we lay motionless with fear, thinking we might share the same fate. Presently the gate of the apartment opened, and there came out a black monster as tall as a palm tree. He had but one eye, which was in the very middle of his forehead, and looked like a ball of fire. His 4 teeth were long and sharp. His under lip hung down upon his breast, his ears resembled those of an elephant, and covered his shoulders, and his nails were very long and crooked. The sight of so hideous a giant we could scarcely keep from swooning while he sat down in the porch gazing upon us. At length he advanced, and taking me up by the skin of the neck, as I would take up a kitten, and having viewed me well, and perceived that I was nothing but skin and bone, he threw me on the ground with disdain. He took up all the rest one by one, and examined them in the same manner, and the poor captain, being the fattest amongst us, fell the victim to his savage appetite. He was presently killed, roasted, and eaten by the dreadful monster. When the one-eyed giant had finished his savage meal, he stretched himself upon a great stone bench in the portico, and fell asleep, snoring louder than thunder. In this manner he slept till morning. For our parts, it was impossible for us to sleep, and we passed the night in the most distressing fears imaginable. Day being come, the giant awoke, got up, stretched himself, and went out, leaving us in the palace, which now resounded with our cries and lamentations. At length I cried to my companions in misfortune, let us not waste the hours in useless sorrow. Let us make floats of the timber we saw on the coast, and commit ourselves upon them to the sea. We had better trust ourselves to the mercy of the winds and waves than continue here, to fall one after the other a prey to the appetite of that devouring monster. Trademark. Advice was as eagerly adopted. We hastened down to the sea-shore, taking with us tools from the apartment, and laboured hard to make our floats ready to carry us out to sea, before the giant should discover we were gone. We had not finished them till the evening, and before we could push them from the beach our tyrant came in search of us, and drove us like a flock of sheep before him to the palace. We had the anguish to behold another of our unfortunate comrades roasted for his supper, and having glutted himself with the brutal feast, he lay down on his back, and began to snore so loud that the place echoed with the noise. Our desperate situation now gave us courage to attempt some means for our deliverance. 9 of the most resolute of us got Up softly, and taking 9 spits, we held the points of them in the fire till they were red hot. And then thrusting them all at once into the Monstera Euro trademark SI, we blinded him. The pain occasioned him to utter a frightful scream, and he began to grope about with his hands to catch us, that he might sacrifice us to his rage, but we took care to keep out of his reach, and having sought for us some time in vain, he opened the ebony gate, and went out of the palace howling dreadfully. We did not stay long behind him, but hastened to our floats, and only waited for daylight to embark upon them, but scarcely was the first dawn of day visible when we beheld our monstrous enemy approaching the shore, led on by others of the same species. We immediately jumped upon our floats, and pushed them from the shore as fast as possible, and the tide assisted us greatly, but the giants, seeing us likely to escape, tore great pieces of rock from the cliffs, and wading into the water up to their waists, hurled them at us with all their might, and instantly sunk every float but the one I was upon, and all my companions except the 2 with me were drowned, and we with great difficulty escaped the fate of our companions. For 2 days we were tossed about at sea, and believed we must perish for want of food, if we were not swallowed up by the waves. On the evening of the 2nd day, however, we drove upon an island, where we found excellent fruit and good water, with which we refreshed ourselves, and lay down to sleep under the shade of the trees. We were soon awakened by the terrible hissings of an enormous serpent, who came gliding along the ground with incredible swiftness. One of my unfortunate comrades was swallowed up in a moment, while I and the other fled, and climbed up the highest tree we could find to shield ourselves from his attack. Presently the serpent came hissing to the root of the tree, and winding himself round the trunk, reared his head so high that he soon reached my only remaining companion, who sat much lower on the tree than I did, and devoured him like the former one. I sat motionless with terror, and already more dead than alive, the monstrous creature unwound himself from the tree and glided away. I waited on the tree till late the next day, and perceiving nothing then of the serpent, I ventured down, but my fear took away all my strength, and I was incapable of exploring the island in search of a place of safety. I could not help wishing that my float had been sunk by the giants along with the others, for it seemed to me that my life was only prolonged that I might endure the most cruel of sufferings. I gathered together a great quantity of small wood, brambles, and dry thorns, and making them up into faggots, formed a great circle with them round the tree, and fastened the uppermost to the branches of the tree. Having finished my work, I shut myself within the circle, and the serpent failed not to come as I expected he would. He went round and round the tree, seeking for an entrance, but the rampart I had made effectually secured me, so that he lay till daylight like a cat watching a mouse. When day appeared he retired, and after the sun arose I ventured to leave my hiding place. I was so exhausted for want of sleep and had suffered so greatly from his poisonous breath, that death seemed to me more desirable than living, and I ran towards the sea, resolving to throw myself in, but just as I was about to fulfill my rash determination, I perceived a ship in full sail at a considerable distance. I shouted as loud as I could for help, and the captain sent his boat for me. As soon as I got on board, the captain, seeing I was quite in rags, gave me some of his own suits, and treated me in all respects with great attention. When we came to an anchor at the port of Jalabat, the captain calling me to him, said, Sir, I have here some bales of goods which belonged to a merchant who sailed with me some time since, and he being dead, I intended to dispose of them for the benefit of his heirs. You shall sell them for me, and shall be allowed the usual factorage. I eagerly inquired the name of the owner, and to my astonishment was told Sinbad. I could not hear myself named without emotion, and looking earnestly at the captain, I recollected him to be the person who, in my second voyage, had left me in the island where I had fallen asleep, and had set sail without me. You believe, then trademark, said I, that Sinbad is dead, trademark. Certainly, trademark, he replied, for one day when we landed on a small uninhabited island to take in water, I know not by what mistake, I set sail without observing he was not come on board with the other passengers, nor was his absence discovered till 4 hours after, when so brisk a gale sprung up that it was impossible to tack about and look for him. There can be therefore no doubt that he perished on that uninhabited island. Trademark. No, Captain trademark, I exclaimed, I did not perish. In me you behold that Sinbad, who escaped that and many other perils. Trademark, the captain being convinced, eagerly delivered me up the goods, and strictly accounted with me for those he had already sold. I continued my voyage with the honest captain, and sold my merchandise very advantageously, and at length returned to Baghdad with vast increase of riches. Sinbad, having finished the relation of his third voyage, rose from the table, and giving another present to Hindbad, invited him to dinner the next day, to hear the adventures of the fourth voyage. The fourth voyage of Sinbad. Having settled my affairs, I commenced a journey overland into Persia, and having bought a large stock of the beautiful manufactures of that country, I loaded a vessel, and embarked with my goods. We had not been at sea many days when the ship struck upon a rock, and soon beat to pieces. The cargo went to the bottom, and many of the merchants and seamen were drowned. And a few others saved ourselves on a plank, and were carried by the current to an island that lay before us. Having got safely on shore, we walked up the island, and were presently surrounded by black savages, who seized us, and shared us among them. And 5 of my companions were taken by one man, who ordered us to sit down, and gave us some herbs to eat. My companions ate greedily of the herbs, but I kept them in my hand without tasting. I presently observed that my companions lost their senses, and when they spoke, they knew not what they said. I then threw away the herbs, resolving never to taste them. Rice prepared with oil of cocoa nuts was next given to us, and my unhappy comrades devoured it greedily. I soon understood that the savages had given us herbs in order to rob us of our senses, to make us fat, and then devour us. Accordingly, I saw the cannibals eat my comrades, one after the other, but I, instead of growing fat, grew thinner daily, and I fell into a languishing disorder, which proved my safety, for the savages did not think me fit to be eaten. They now entirely neglected me, and one day when they were gone into the woods, I determined to make my escape. I took care to provide myself with as much rice as my weak state would permit me to carry, and stole away. I took a contrary way to that the savages were gone, and travelled all night, and then I halted, and supped on my rice. After refreshing myself with a short sleep, I pursued my journey. I travelled in this manner during 7 days, and on the 8th, I came in sight of the sea-shore, where I beheld a number of white persons like myself, gathering pepper. I approached them without fear, and they ran to meet me, and questioned me in Arabic as to who I was, and whence I came, and I speedily satisfied their curiosity, by giving them an account of my shipwreck and my escape from the savage negroes. These white people permitted me to share their provisions, and in a few days recovered my strength, and I sailed with them to the island from whence they came. They presented me to their king, who was a good prince. He listened to my adventures, gave me clothes, and commanded me to be taken care of. I esteemed myself very fortunate in the kind treatment I received from this generous monarch. It appeared to me very extraordinary to see that when the king and his nobles went a hunting, they rode their horses without bridle or saddle. I could not forbear to question his Majesty upon the reason of his avoiding the use of bridles and saddles. The king heard me with a look of surprise, and then assured me that he was quite at a loss to know what I meant by the things called bridle and saddle. Upon this I went to a very skillful workman, and gave him the model of the stock of a saddle, and under my constant superintendence, he made it very well. I covered it myself with embroidered velvet. I then went to another mechanic, for whom I drew the pattern of a bridle and stirrups. I put them upon one of the King a trademark S horses, and presented him to his Majesty, who was so delighted, that he mounted immediately, and rode about the grounds belonging to the palace almost the whole of the day, while his ministers, the principal officers of the court, and others of the nobility gathered round me, entreating that I would furnish them. I received such magnificent presents for my saddles and bridles, that I presently grew rich. I made my court very constantly to the king, who one day said to me, Sinbad, I love thee, and all my subjects follow my example, and value thee according to thy merits. I wish to make thee one of my subjects. Thou must marry and settle in my dominions. Trademark. He then gave me one of his ladies of the court, who was young, noble, rich, beautiful, and virtuous. The marriage ceremonies being over, we retired to a place belonging to my wife, where we lived in great harmony and contentment. I had contracted a strict intimacy with one of my neighbours, and one day as I was sitting down to dinner, I was informed his wife had just died. I immediately hastened to afford him some consolation under his misfortune. Alice trademark, said he. What comfort can I take who have not above an hour to live? It is the established law of this country, that the living husband should be interred with the dead wife, and the wife with the dead husband. Nothing, therefore, can save me, and every one must submit to this law. Trademark. I was ready to sink with dismay on hearing of this cruel law, and before I had recovered from my consternation, his kindred, friends, and neighbours came to assist at this barbarous ceremony. They dressed the woman in her richest apparel, and adorned her with all her jewels, and then putting her into an open coffin, began their march towards the place of burial. The husband followed next the corpse, and after him a long train of relations and friends, among whom I was a spectator. They went up an exceedingly high mountain, on the summit of which the procession halted, and a great stone was removed, which covered the mouth of a very deep pit. The corpse was let down into the pit. And then the husband, embracing his kindred and friends, suffered himself to be put into another open coffin, in which was placed a pot of water and 7 little loaves, and was then let down in the same manner, and the ceremony being ended, they covered the whole again, and returned to their respective homes. I went home deeply affected, and day and night I thought of nothing but how to effect my escape. But while I was forming 1,000 projects to escape this evil, my worst fears were verified. My wife fell sick and died. You may easily judge of my sorrow when I beheld the preparations for my own funeral, at which the king and his whole court, to show their regard for me, intended to assist. Earth's corpse, in her most magnificent apparel, was put into her coffin, and the cavalcade began. I went next the corpse, with my eyes full of tears, and my heart bursting with despair. When we arrived at the mountain, I could no longer contain my anguish, and throwing myself at the feet of the king, I besought him in the most moving terms, to have compassion on me and spare my life, and suffer me to return to my native country. But all I said was to no effect. They only made the greater haste to let my wife into the pit, and the next moment I was put down after her in an open coffin, with a vessel of water and 7 loaves. In short, they covered up the mouth of the pit, in despite of my grief and lamentable cries. As I came near the bottom, I discovered by the aid of a little light that came from above, the nature of this subterraneous place. It was a long cave, many fathoms deep. I immediately smelt an insufferable stench from the multitude of dead bodies I saw on the right and left. Nay, I fancied I heard some of them sigh and groan. I made haste to leave my coffin, and, getting at a distance from the dead bodies, lay down upon the ground, where I sat a long time bathed in tears, and reproaching myself for leaving my happy home. With these vain complaints I made the cave to echo. Yet I still felt an inclination to live, and groped my way back to the coffin for some of the bread and water in it, on which I lived for some days, and it being all spent, I prepared for death. Having I wandered very far into the cave, on a sudden I heard something panting very hard. Close beside me, I started up, upon which the thing ran away. I pursued it, and continued this chase so long that at last I saw a glimmering light. This redoubled my eagerness. I went on, and sometimes lost sight of it, but always found it again, and at last discovered that it came from a hole in the rock, just large enough for a man to get out it. I crept through the hole, and found myself on the seashore. I leave you to judge of the excess of my joy. When I recovered from my surprise, I perceived I had been pursuing a sea monster. I examined the mountain, and found that it extended for some miles between the town and sea. I fell on my knees to thank God for my deliverance, and having feasted on some shellfish I found on the shore, I returned to the cave, and groped about among the coffins for all the diamonds, rubies, pearls, gold bracelets, and rich stuff I could find. These I carried to the shore, and tying them up together into bales, With the cords that let down the coffins, I laid them on the beach, waiting till some ship should sail by. In 2 days a ship came out of the harbour, and passed BV that part of the coast. I made a signal with my turban, and they sent a boat to take me on board. I told the mariners I had been wrecked, and had just been able to get on shore with the bales they saw. The captain questioned me no further. I found a ship ready to sail for Balsara, on board of which I embarked. The rest of my voyage was prosperous, and I arrived at Baghdad with a vast increase of riches. Sinbad made another present to Hindbad, with the usual charge of returning the day to hear more surprising adventures. The fifth voyage of Sinbad. Forgetting the perils I had suffered, I built me a ship at my own expense, loaded her with a rich cargo, and we set sail with a fair wind. After being at sea several weeks, we landed upon a desert island in search of fresh water, where we found a Roca Euro trademark egg, equal in size to that I formerly mentioned. The merchants and sailors gathered around it in great amazement, and though I entreated and conjured them not to meddle with the egg, they would not forbear, but, making a hole in it with their hatchets, they picked out the young rock, piece after piece, and roasted it. Scarcely had they made an end of their treat, when there appeared in the air, at a distance, 2 great clouds. I knew it was the rocks belonging to the young bird, and calling the people together, I made them embark and set sail. 2 rocks alighted, and seeing their egg destroyed made a most frightful noise. Presently, they took flight and disappeared. It was not long before they returned with stones, or rather rocks, between their talons of a monstrous size. When they came directly over my ship, they hovered, and one let its stone drop, but it missed us and fell into the sea. The other rock threw the stone so exactly in the very middle of the ship, that it split into 1,000 pieces. The mariners and passengers were all killed or thrown into the sea. The latter was my fate, but I fortunately caught hold of a piece of the wreck, which carried me to an island whose shore was very steep. These islands seemed to be a delicious garden, abounding in the finest fruit trees of every description. Advancing further into the island, I saw a little old man sitting upon the bank of a rivulet. I supposed him to be some unfortunate person shipwrecked like myself, and going nearer I saluted him, but he only bowed his head. In return, he entreated by signs that I would carry him on my back over the brook. I had no doubt that he was infirm, and destitute of help, and I readily took him on my back, and crossed the brook, when instead of getting down he clasped his legs so firmly round my throat, that I was almost strangled, and being unable to relieve myself, I swooned away with pain and affright. Notwithstanding my fainting, the old fellow held fast to my neck, and when I recovered my senses again, he struck me so rudely on the side, that I was forced to rise up against my will. He then compelled me to walk under the trees, while he diverted himself with gathering the fruit. He never quitted me a moment. When I laid down at night he lay down with me, his legs always fast about my neck, and every morning he compelled me to get up as soon as the day dawned, from which time till sunset I was forced to bear about this odious burthen. One day I found in my way several dry calabashes. I picked up a large one, and after cleaning it, pressed into it some juice of grapes, which abounded in the island. Having filled the calabash, I set it aside for several days, and on coming to it again, I found it to be most excellent wine. A Euroearth old man, perceiving the effect which this drink had upon me, made a sign for me to give him some of it. I gave him the calabash, and the liquor pleasing his palate, he drank the whole of it, and became completely drunk, and by degrees loosened his legs from my neck, so that I was able to throw him upon the ground, where he soon fell into convulsions, and I had the satisfaction to witness his death. I was extremely glad to be freed from this detestable old fellow. I hastened to the seaside, where I found the crew of a ship who had just cast anchor. They were greatly surprised to see me, and to hear of my adventures. You fell trademark said they, into the hands of the old man of the sea. And you are the first person who ever escaped being strangled by him. Trademark. They took me on board their vessel, and when we came to the harbour of a great city, one of the merchants carried me to some persons in the town, whose employment was to gather cocoa nuts, and recommended me to their care. He gave me also a great bag and provisions for the journey. I followed them, and we came to a great forest of tall straight cocoa trees, whose bark was so perfectly smooth that it was impossible for any man to climb up to the branches. When we entered the forest, we saw a surprising number of apes, who instantly ran to the top of the trees with the utmost swiftness. Merchants with whom I was, picked up stones and pelted the apes, who, to revenge themselves, gathered cocoa nuts and threw it us. We secured the cocoa nuts, and continued throwing stones to provoke the apes, till we possessed ourselves of as many nuts as we could carry. We then returned to the city, where the merchants gave me the value of my nuts, and advised me to do the same every day till I had got money enough to carry me home. I soon amassed a considerable sum, and taking leave of all the kind merchants, I embarked joyfully on board a vessel, and returned safe home again. When Sinbad had finished, he ordered Hindbad his usual present, and they returned to dinner the next day, when Sinbad gave them an account of his sixth voyage. The sixth voyage of Sinbad. The expiration of 1 year, I prepared for a sixth voyage, against the entreaties of my kindred. I began my voyage, which proved very long and most unfortunate, for the pilot lost his course, and knew not which way to steer. At length he discovered where he was, and exclaimed that we must all inevitably perish, for within a quarter of an hour the ship would be dashed to pieces against a mountain. It was true, the sails presently split, the ropes burst asunder with the force with which the ship drove against the foot of an inaccessible mountain, yet we saved our lives, most of our provisions, and our goods. We looked around us, and saw the coast covered all over with pieces of wrecks of ships, and great heaps of Mina trademark S-bones, with incredible quantities of rich goods, which proved how many unfortunate persons must have perished there. To climb the mountain, which almost reached the skies, was impossible. In this wretched place we continued till my comrades died one after the other. I survived them all, and my stock of food being exhausted, I suddenly made a desperate resolution to trust myself to the current of a broad black river, which entered a cavern in the mountain. I made afloat, and I loaded it with bales of rich stuffs, and fastening my cargo with ropes, I went on board my float with 2 little oars I had made, and left it to the mercy of the current. As soon as I was in the cavern, I lost all light. I floated for some days, at length a pleasing sleep seized upon me. When I awoke I found myself in a vast country, at the brink of a river, where my float was tied up, amidst a great number of negroes. I exclaimed aloud, Allah be praised, trademark, and one of the blacks, who understood Arabic, came towards me and said, brother, we came hither today to dig canals from this river, which comes out of yonder mountain, to water our fields, when we found you floating in this manner. Trademark. I begged of them to give me food, which they did, and after I had appeased my hunger, I gave them an account of all that had befallen me. They requested I would go with them to their king, and they placed me on a fine horse, bringing my cargo and float after me. We marched thus till we came to Sarandab, for it was in that island I landed. I prostrated myself before the monarch, to whom I related my story, with which he was so surprised and pleased, that he ordered it to be written in letters of gold. He then ordered one of his officers to take care of me. When I paid my next visit to the king, I presented him with the choicest pieces of my rock crystal, and then prayed him to allow me to return to my own country, which request he granted, and sent by me a letter and a brilliant present to the sovereign, the Caliph Harun al-Rashid, with many rich gifts for myself. I returned to Baghdad. My first care was to present myself to the Caliph, who received the letter and present of the king of Sarandab with the greatest satisfaction. Sinbad here left off speaking, and they all returned the following day to hear the relation of the last voyage. Event Voyage of Sindbad. Being returned from my 6th voyage, I absolutely laid aside all thoughts of travelling any farther. But one day, as I was entertaining a party of my friends, I was sent for by the Caliph. Sinbad, trademark, said the monarch, I stand in need of your services. You must bear an answer and present from me to the king of Sarandab. Trademark, I used my endeavours to be excused, but the king would take no denial, but ordered me 1,000 sequins for the expenses of my journey. I embarked and had a favourable voyage. When I arrived at Sarandab, I delivered the Caliph trademark's letter and present, which he received with satisfaction. A little time afterwards I solicited leave to depart. We had not been long at sea before we were attacked by corsairs, who seized upon our ship and carried us into slavery. We were all sold for slaves, and I was bought by a rich merchant. He inquired if I understood the use of the bow. I assured him I did. He then gave me a bow and arrows, and taking me behind him upon an elephant, carried me to a forest. We stopped near an exceeding high tree. My master bid me alight, and climb that tree, telling me I must wait there till a troop of elephants pass by, and then shoot at them, and if any one fell, I was to hasten back to the city to give him notice of it. Having given me proper directions, he left me a bag of provisions, and returned to the town. As soon as the sun arose on the following morning, I beheld a great number. I shot several arrows among them, and at last one of the elephants fell, the rest retired immediately, and left me at liberty to go and acquaint my patron with my success. He commended my diligence, and we went back to the forest, and dug a hole to bury the elephant in, till he decayed, when the merchant intended to take his teeth, for he traded in ivory. I continued this course for 2 months. One morning one of the largest of them wound his trunk round the stem of the tree on which I was, and tore it up by the roots. I fell with the tree, and the same elephant, taking me up with his trunk, laid me on his back, and carried me to a hill and left me. I ventured to get up, and discovered the hill covered all over with the bones and teeth of elephants. I did not stay, but returned to my master, who concluded I was destroyed. I conducted him to the hill, and we loaded the elephant on which we rode, with as many as he could carry. My master then gave me liberty to return to my own country. He loaded a ship with a valuable cargo for me, an abundance of provisions. We set sail, and at last I came safe to Baghdad, and presented myself to the Caliph Sinbad then gave Hindbad 100 sequins, and desired him to quit his porter trademark's employment, and come every day to dine with him, that he might have reason to remember Sinbad the Sailor. Printed by Thomas Richardson, Derby,